I am tired and frustrated with the concept that only a few people have suicidal thoughts, or only people who have serious issues or problems or whatever. Basically, I'm just really frustrated with the stigma against people who have suicidal thoughts and thoughts of harming themselves or thoughts of not being alive or those kind of things. I'm really frustrated with how that's treated in a lot of ways. So I just got off the phone with a person who had very different views of this than I did, and reminded me of one of the reasons why I can't work in big companies who screen for suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation and then don't accept those people. I just have such a problem with that. And I understand that they have to monitor their risk and whatever, and they say that those people need a higher level of care, but that is not helpful. People who have suicidal thoughts should not be locked up in a psych ward unless they're actively trying to harm themselves. Obviously, that's a completely different thing. But I feel like we are just really not serving people well. And part of that, I think, is that we don't open up this conversation enough, and we don't have the conversation that, which I think I feel differently than a lot of mental health professionals on this. I think most people have thoughts of not wanting to be alive at some point in their life. And I think that's a part of the normal human experience. Sometimes things are terrible. The thunder, I don't know if you can hear it, but I feel like it's just like perfect for my mood in this topic. But sometimes things fall apart. Sometimes things go downhill in a terrible way. And when that happens, there are moments where you're like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm fed up. I don't have the energy. This is just more than I wanted to take on and more than I feel like I can take on or thought I could take on. And those thoughts come up. And I think that's fairly normal in the grand scheme of things. And I think the fact that we're not talking about it like this makes it so people who feel these things and think these things feel like they have to hide and that there's something wrong with them, and they should, if they tell anyone, they're going to be locked up or put in a psych ward, or people will think they're crazy, or people will think that they actually are trying to harm themselves. And I don't think that's helpful. I think we need to talk about this. I think we need to be open about this. I think we need to let people know that if you have these thoughts, you are actually a normal human, and maybe they're more extreme sometimes. Maybe there is a chemical imbalance. Maybe you are actively trying to harm yourself, and then we do need to do something about that to keep you safe. But there are so many other people that are here, I feel like, in this area that aren't being served very well at all, and are actually, there's more stigma against them because they're struggling with these thoughts, or they're struggling with just not wanting to continue, and we're not talking about that openly enough and honestly enough. And I really think if we surveyed people, that are getting older, getting closer to the end of their life, and we said, was there ever a time in your life that you thought about not wanting to be alive, or that things got bad enough that you were like, man, I can't do this anymore? I'm pretty sure most people would say yes if they're being really honest with themselves, because life is hard. Times get tough. Sometimes we're not able to push through as well as other times. Sometimes everything falls apart at one point. Sometimes we lose people who we never thought we would lose, and we don't know how to go on without them. And that sucks, and that's hard. And that is part of this human experience. And I feel like if we're not talking about that, and we're not supporting each other, and we're not saying like, hey, I've been there too, like, let me try to help you and love you through this, and let you know that this is gonna be okay, and this is normal, there's nothing wrong with you. I feel like that's a serious problem. As you can see, I'm like quite passionate about this, because I keep seeing it come up. And there's a bunch of things that I want to talk about, and different areas of this, and I have an article coming out that will help you if you are having self-harm urges that you're trying to fight. Also, dealing with suicidal ideation. Some of those things are a little more extreme in that we need to kind of support you and figure out how to not act on those things. I have all of that coming out as well. But I just wanted to shoot this to talk about the fact that we shouldn't be scared to talk about this stuff. We shouldn't be scared to talk about death and suicide and not wanting to be alive and all of these things that are really just a part of life. And all of us probably can point to someone who has taken their own life or has struggled with that. And if you can't think of somebody who has struggled with wanting to harm themselves, then you just haven't talked to them enough about that, because there are someone in everybody's life that probably is currently struggling with this and could use some love and support and some really us normalizing the fact that this happens. This happens to most people, I think, at some point. Now, I'm not trying to minimize serious suicidal ideation and actively trying to harm yourself. I think that is really serious and needs to be taken really seriously. But I just want to open up this conversation a little bit and be able to have these conversations a little bit more. And yeah, so this is coming up for me in multiple ways. I keep talking to clients who either have self-harm, suicidal thoughts now when they get really down, or they have in the past. And when I talk to people, I'm like, I just feel like I get it. And there's no judgment and there's no anything with that, because I'm like, man, that really sucks. And if you were feeling that, or if you were going through that at that point, then who's to say that I wouldn't experience that same thing and those same thoughts if I was in that situation? Or who's to say that you wouldn't? So when I sit there and I hear that, I'm like, man, this isn't something that's unusual or something that should be stigmatized. This is something that we can all relate to. And really, who's to say that if you weren't in that person's circumstance, or if you weren't feeling as down as they were feeling, or if you lost everything, or you lost, the most important person to you, who's to say you wouldn't have those thoughts too and struggle with those thoughts too? And that's kind of what keeps coming up for me, because I keep talking to people who have lost so much and have been through so much, and I feel for them, and I just feel like it's so much more common than we make it seem like it is, right? That depth of loss, and also those kind of thoughts. And I also think that there's a lot of gray area in between all of this. Like one lady that I was talking to and I was kind of screening for self-harm and suicidal thoughts, she said, I'm not actively suicidal. I don't want to kill myself. I don't want to harm myself. She's like, but honestly, sometimes when I'm driving through the canyon, I think like, what if I just went like this and like turned the wheel slightly and went over the canyon? What if I did that? Then I would be gone. She thinks through that kind of stuff. And when she said that, I was like, wow. I mean, I've thought of that kind of stuff too. And I think most people have at some point. That doesn't mean that you want to do it, but you're like, wow, I could do this. I could do this. This could happen to me. And maybe some of that is like fear, like, ooh, I don't want to like fall off this cliff, or I don't want to like make a mistake and like overcorrect or something. But sometimes it's just like, I think it just brings up the almost how fragile life is, and how little things could easily change that. And maybe on a hard day, you're driving home and you're like, I could just end it now. I could just be done with this right now. And those thoughts come up for a lot of people. And I think we need to talk about that, and we need to be open about that, and we need to be able to not judge people for having those thoughts. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this. If you think I'm totally crazy, or if you can relate to this, or I would like to kind of open up a conversation about this and continue talking about this, because I think it's really important. So please share with me, what you think. Reach out to me if you need support, or if you have been feeling judgment for this, or if you've been scared to share these kind of thoughts with someone because of judgment, reach out to me, please. I think we should talk about this, and we should love each other through this, and we should make it something that we can be more open about, because when we're open about things and we can talk about things, then we're able to work through them and support each other through them. That's the only way we can get through how hard life is to come together and to love each other and to support each other, not to judge and not to shame and not to guilt and not to make, people think that they're crazy. That's not how we get through this. So please reach out to me if you need support and help, and reach out to your friends and to your family members. Let people know that you're there for them and that you want to support them. And if you know somebody who's struggling, reach out to them, talk about it. The last thing I'm going to say, I just keep thinking of more things to say, but people think that talking about this makes it more likely that we'll do it. That's not true. So people are scared to talk about suicidal thoughts or that kind of stuff because they feel like bringing it up will like bring something up for that person or make them more likely to do it, and that's just not true. If someone's struggling with these things, they're struggling with them, and they're probably hiding a lot of things in their head that they're not telling you. So being a support to them and being open to talking about this is going to help them. Now, obviously, you don't want to keep bringing it up if they're not bringing it up, or if they're not wanting to talk about it, or if they're not experiencing it, but talking about that with people is going to help. So just be supportive, check in with your friends, check in with people who have struggled with this in the past, and just send love out to people. That's sometimes all we can do. But that's my rant for the day. I hope you guys have a really great day, and if you're struggling, hang in there and get some support. I know it's hard.